I hope you're well rested. Um, Last day of the week. It's kind of exciting. I always look forward to Saturday because typically I get to sleep in for an extra hour. I'm not up chatting with you all. All right. So today we come to the end of a week where we've really gone through all aspects of the four bells, and what we come to at this last day is um, interacting with what's actually under your control. And the reason why this kind of comes up and is associated with the fourth bell is that when you boil it down, when you really boil down what is under your control, you kind of look at how what you have here is is kind of influencing. So bell one is your capacity to be in control of where you pay attention. And so you have an option. You have an option to either kind of be in the thought experience, which is uh, really infinite. Any kind of memory, any kind of expectation, um, that all has uh, that all kind of happens without you having to do anything. I mean, your mind, in a sense, is not yours. It's something that you participate with. So when you're interacting with bell one, what you're doing is you're kind of shifting from this this part of your experience, this part of your experience that connects you to language, that connects you to the past, that connects you to the future. You're kind of shifting from that element of the mind into what you can directly control in the moment, which is what you're putting your attention on. And so with bell one, we say put your attention on sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. So you put your attention on your senses. What do you actually control in regards to bell two? So your body. So what do you actually have control of over your body? Well, you have a lot of control over your body. You've got, how fast you use it, how slow you use it, um, how you train it, um, where you pay attention to it, what you give emphasis to. So you've got some control over that. Um, but you also have, you're kind of beholden to the body's needs. So you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to get plenty of water, you have to have physical contact with other people. I mean, these are all things. Your body ultimately deteriorates and dies. You don't really have any control over that. That's that's just something that you have to adapt to. Now, inside that, you have certain things that you can control over. Um, you can influence the kind of the way the body's operating. You can influence how much effort you put through the body. You can kind of influence the energy running through the body, but you know, control over the body. I wouldn't say I have control over my body. I can interact with my body, and I can kind of tilt my body towards, um, health, or I can, tilt it towards debauchery. Right. So that's the body. Um, so the breath, right? So your breath is part of the autonomic nervous system, and so in a sense, you don't have control over your breath. Now you can control your breath for kind of certain, you know, extents of, or certain periods of time. But if you tried to hold your breath past a certain point, your body would essentially kick you out of control and take over for the control for breathing. You can't, for example, hold your breath to death because your body will kick on and uh, take that over. So you can't control that. Your body is dealing and interacting with a lot more information than you're aware of. So one of the ways they describe the conscious mind versus the subconscious mind is the conscious mind can these numbers might be a little bit off, but they correlate to the actual numbers. But say that the conscious mind processes 40 bits of information a second. So that's what you can be aware of, 40 bits. And your subconscious mind processes 40 million bits of information a second. So you've got these processors that are operating independent of you, that your awareness of is pretty small. It's not as massive as what your subconscious is doing. And they know this from the brain. Our brains are operating at such a high level beyond our kind of awareness that we're very fortunate, right? We're very fortunate to have these bodies and these brains. So you get to bell 3, what do you have control over there? You can influence, like we had the plus and minus sign. You can influence the kind of the leaning of your central nervous system. You can kind of bring it to a neutral. You can rev it up. You can slow it down. And would you say you have control over that? I wouldn't say control's the right word. I'd say more influence. You have influence over these things. So, regarding bell 1, 2, and 3, the control that you have is kind of the control that mindfulness brings, and the kind of the fundamental element of mindfulness is your attention. And so while you may not have control over your mind, you do have control over what you place your attention on. Now, while you may not have control over all the processes of your body, you do have a sense of control over what you pay attention to. You don't necessarily have control over your breath, but you do have control over how you interact and pay attention to your breathing. And what's really fascinating about these 3 bells and attention itself is that as you become more and more adept at paying attention, what you will be able to pay attention to will grow. And by that I mean your lens, the lens through which you pay attention, will become more sophisticated. So, you go from like a magnifying glass to a microscope to a 600x microscope to a 10,000x microscope to an electron microscope, to the point where when you put your attention on something, everything else is pushed to the side, and you're able to really zoom in. And when you really zoom in, what you'll find is not that thoughts disappear or that your body disappears. What you'll find is that these things that seem solid will become more and more transparent. So, for example, often when I'm in a kind of a clear kind of state, a mindful state, a fully present state, I'll notice my thoughts that are showing up as see-through. So in the early days, when thoughts showed up, they'd be really solid, and I couldn't see through them. It was just, this was all there was. And as the practice continued, there'd be breaks. And then now it's more often like this. I still have thoughts, right? But I see right through them. And because I see right through them, they don't really get legs. And when they don't get legs, they don't really keep generating, and they kind of fade. They kind of just settle, right? It's kind of like it's muddy water that kind of settles down. And keeping with that analogy of the muddy water, so it's not like you control the water. It's not like you control how much mud's in it. But in the sense of mindfulness, you can control how choppy that water is. And when you really start to settle, and you really start to kind of let everything kind of quiet down, what shows up is awareness, right? But awareness combined with 4th bell is something else. So awareness combined with love, awareness combined with compassion, awareness combined with gratitude is something else. There's a lot there's a lot to there's a lot to talk about in this context. Fourth bell. The goal of Armor Down is to get to fourth bell. The fourth bell is open-heartedness. Fourth bell is compassion. Fourth bell is courage. Fourth bell's virtue, and it's virtue. It's virtue not because virtue is intellectually ideal or whatever. It's virtue because it, it's virtue because of the way it impacts other people. What your awareness, what you do when you're fully focused and open-hearted is bigger than you. I see it with my kids. You can see it with animals. You can see it with the way you interact with people in stores. You can see it with how you interact with people on the road. The way you let someone in, instead of cutting them off. You see it everywhere. And this is the piece that is, I think, it's the most exciting part of all this, right? The most exciting part of all this is that, we really don't have as much control as we imagine over our lives. We have a lot of control over how we interact with our lives and how we pay attention to our lives. But our lives are, in a lot of ways, beyond our control. But when we interact with presence and open-heartedness, there's an aspect to that it's out of our control that becomes much less fearful and far more kind of enlivening, right? It speaks to the reality that your participation matters, right? Fourth bell speaks to the reality that you are a valuable component to life as a whole, and life needs you. And what happens when you participate more and more with fourth bell or open-heartedness is that you'll start to realize that while you're not in control, it's not out of control either. It's a participation. It's a relationship that feeds itself and becomes more advanced and complex as you participate. And it's remarkable. It's remarkable. Now the thing about it is you can't think of it. You can't. It's not something that you can do beforehand. It's something that you do in the moment. So if you listen to the stanza, it makes it very clear. Fiddling with this and that technique is of no avail. Simply act decisively and without reserve. And so what that basically says is that if you're trying to solve like aspects of your life or fix aspects of your life or evolve aspects of your life, and you do it according to some plan, right? You see something online, do this and do that, and you try to do that, and it's not you, right? It's not authentically you, it's something else. Then you're not going to be what you are. You're going to be what you imagine you should be. And if you are trying to be what you imagine you should be, your capacity to be authentic and open-hearted will diminish. So when you decide to kind of give your open-heartedness fullest aspect of yourself to whatever moment there is, that's when the mystery starts to be kind of something that you can perceive. I saw this so much in Iraq, and I was beginning to kind of understand a sense of like just letting go. It was more spiritual, it was more religious. It was kind of a surrender, which was, I'm so out of control in this environment. Like there could be an IED anywhere. I don't have any control over this. So In Iraq, it was just a surrender to, this is bigger than me. Like I'm so at the will of God, or I'm at the mercy of life. I mean, however you want to imagine it. I experienced that in Iraq, and it makes sense, right? You're in a war zone. Everything's at the tip of the spear. You never know what could happen. If it's your time to go, it's your time to go. Et cetera, et cetera. And so I experienced that in Iraq. I didn't understand what I was experiencing. I just experienced the limitations of what I was able to kind of control. When I came back, I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't understand. I didn't understand what I kind of realized in Iraq. And so when I came home, I tried to get back to that sense of surrender and confidence. Like, I surrender this moment, but I'm confident that whatever shows up, I have the tools and the resources to get through it. And so it's interesting how there's this correlation between the best version of myself in Iraq was what I slowly started to reconnect to through the practice of mindfulness. And I know a lot of veterans out there experience their wartime experience as the experience of the best version of themselves, and kind of a longing to get back to that. Well, that's where the bells come in. I mean, that's literally what the brand Armor Down is designed to kind of fortify in your reality, that you've got this skill. That skill is how to pay attention, or mindfulness, and it can be rendered useful in these 4 areas. And the first 3 areas are all set up: the mind, the body, excuse me, bell 1, the mind; bell 2, the body; bell 3, the breath; bell 4. They're all set up to get you to bell 4. And bell 4 is where you want to be more often than not. You want to be in this place of open heartedness. And finally, and then I'll finish up. What's so cool, and this is what you saw in the military, is that when you're flowed in, right, when you're into that moment, you get to see it reflected in the fluidity of the team. When you flow into that moment with open-heartedness as a civilian, or just in your regular life, you get to see that life is part of your team. It's not so localized and so clearly defined in the military environment, which is, this is the edge of death. You've got to rely on your team to survive, et cetera, et cetera. In the civilian environment, there's no tip of the spear. There just is life itself. But what you start to see, and it's not constant. It's not like this constant state. It's just this. It's this. You check back in. You check back in, and you keep getting reminded over and over and over again that life is participating with you if you let it. And the way you let it, and this is what you really have control over, the way you let it is by how often you're authentically you. You're open heartedly you. Because your mind is not you. Your body is not you. Your body and your mind articulate you. Your mind articulates you so that other people can understand and you can understand them. Your body articulates you so you can participate with the planet, right? So it's kind of your relationship to kind of the physical existence. Your breath is your interaction with the moment, your feelings, your internal world, and the external world. But then your heart, right? Fourth bell. Your heart is interacting with the mystery. And I am in armor when I'm in Armor Down world, right, which is this right now under the brand, under the scope of Armor Down. I stay neutral. So I talk about the mystery in neutral language. But in other contexts, I'll talk about the mystery in terms of God and divinity and spirit. But the neutral language for this is the mystery. And what makes life particularly worth living is that you don't have control, and that certain moments are just unbelievable. It's full of awe, or joy, or a deep sense of peace, or profound insight and wisdom. um, these things, if they were in your control, would render life kind of dull, right? What makes awe and wonder and phenomena that only happens once so incredible and so life affirming is that they show you that, you know, there's always something new. There's always aspects to life that you never imagined. And those are the things that really feed life, that make life just like, wow, you know, it's worth the struggle. It's worth the suffering to experience this. And I can't tell you how big of a difference it is to be in an open-hearted kind of space than it is to be shut down, because there's a correlation between your open-heartedness and how life was going to respond to you. It's totally related. It's 100% connected. So in a sense, what you have control over above all else is how you pay attention. But you also have control over how much your paying attention leads to how open-heartedly you participate with your life. And I'm not talking walking around like, oh, I'm all happy, la la la. Like, open-heartedness includes suffering. So if you're open and you allow the suffering to be, you know, it's a purifying thing. It doesn't get stuck. It doesn't become a trauma. It's a purifying thing. It sets you up for the next round. So, you know, really take that to heart. You know, the suffering in your life, if you can meet it with an open heart and accept that this is there, not try to explain it away, not try to figure it out, not try to dull it down, not try to escape from it. That's the type of stuff that kind of burns away the excess, burns away the slack to kind of keep your heart, you know, bright and open and ready to participate at all levels. So I'll finish up with that, and we'll get to the actual practice itself. We're gonna go heavy on bell 4. So that means, you know, I'm gonna emphasize gratitude. I'm gonna emphasize compassion. So just be prepared for that. But the other 3 bells will just we'll keep the same. We'll keep it pretty even. All the bells, all 4 bells are going to be about the same amount of time. And then we'll finish up on a strong note on Friday. You know, we'll go into Friday, you know, with goodwill and a wide open heart. So go ahead, get yourself squared away, get yourself comfortable. Here comes first bell. Sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. Just go through sight picture. Look around, notice light and shadow. With a mindset of curiosity, just notice how light and shadow plays around everywhere. Once you've explored your area's light and shadow, go ahead and shut your eyes down. Either cast them down or close them. From there, tap into sound. What do you hear? Where do you hear it? From there, notice your sense of touch. What type of information are you getting from your skin? Is it awareness of the fabric of clothing, temperature, movement of air? Check out sense of smell. Check out taste. Let's move that sense of focus into the body for bell 2. First, your ground, what's beneath you, what's the bottom of your body touching, so the bottom of your feet, the bottom of your rear, the backs of your legs. Your crisscross applesauce, how are your legs kind of interwoven? From there, move up into the pelvis. Move the pelvis around. Tuck the tailbone, untuck the tailbone, shift left and right, and find a balanced position for the pelvis. From there, move up into the core. Let the belly out. Let the belly out. Think of the front of your abs. So the front of your abs, so rectus abdominis. So it's a line of muscle tissue from your pubic bone up to your lower ribs. And so what I want you to think about is I want you to think about that line of muscle kind of bracing the rest of your spine. So if you let your belly forward and kind of lean back a little bit, you might notice that if your belly is out and you're leaning back a little bit, you might be able to catch that line of muscle and kind of let that line of muscle be the kind of the leverage that holds the front of your body kind of stable. It's something to play with. It's not something to perfect. It's something to play with. So just noticing the front of your body as a kind of way to kind of counterbalance the kind of the pull of your spine, the weight of your shoulders. That squares away core. Come up to heart space. So when you're in heart space, you might notice that if you kind of lean back and push your belly out at the same time, you'll kind of feel your belly go taut, and you'll kind of feel your upper back, your heart space kind of resting at the top, like kind of resting on top of these muscles in the belly, resting kind of at the top of the torso. Let the shoulders drop. So it's like you're kind of leaning back and pushing forward at the same time, kind of a counterbalance. From there, come into the throat space. Notice throat and jaw. You got swallow. You got that. You got sensation of breath. You got temperature. Come to the throat space. So throat space, sorry, we already went to throat space. Go to the head space. Tip top of the head, tip top of the spine. Now kind of think about the length of the spine and then allow for the face, starting with the muscles in the face, all the muscles that are kind of engaged in any way, shape, or form, give them permission to soften. So you've got this nice upright alignment with your spine. So none of your muscles in your face, none of your muscles anywhere really, need to be doing any extra work. So soften the muscles behind the eyes, soften the cheeks, soften the chin, the nose. What's nice here is we're moving into the central nervous system, so you might as well kind of set it up for success. Your nervous system gets a lot of its understanding of what's going on from your face. And your face communicates with your central nervous system through what's called the vagus nerve. So give yourself the tiniest little smile on your face as we move into bell 3. Just a real small smile that only you would notice, but just really just keep it small, keep it slight, keep it subtle, but put one there all the same. Okay, notice baseline breath. Now max it out. And let it go. Now think sides, breathe sides, feel sides. Now think lower belly, think lower back, feel, breathe, lower belly, lower back, feel lower belly, lower back. Now think chest space, breathe chest space, feel chest space. Now put all of it together. Try to feel front, back, sides, and chest space throughout the sequence of the breath. I'm going to call it a three-part breath. You inhale, feel the belly, and as you keep inhaling, you feel the sides, and it fills up into the chest space. One more time, three-part breath. Inhale, starting down at the bottom, then get to the sides, then get to the upper. Now let's do 4, 7, 8, 2 rounds on your own. Just rest in your baseline breathing. Move on to fourth bell. So if you want to, take your right hand and put it over your heart. Try to find where your heart is. It's a little bit left of your sternum. Get quiet and see if you can feel your heart beating underneath your hand. If you can't, it's not a big deal. But what I want you to do is look for it. Look for the feeling of your heart underneath your hand. Relax your belly if you're clenching your belly. If you're really trying hard to feel your heart, you might actually be tensing. So try to relax and soften your shoulders, soften your face, soften your belly, and let the kind of beating of the heart show up for you. Once you can feel your heart beating, or once you kind of have a feeling of when your heart's beating, focus on gratitude. And I really want you to think about gratitude for your heart, like the beating of your heart. It just beats all day long, all of your life. It's just beating, 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 beating. It's just a steady beat. And just think about the fact that you've got this life thing. You got this thing called life, and right here's the kind of the central piece of kind of the place where the mind, the body, and the mystery, right? The parts that we don't understand. They're bigger than us. All kind of go through here. So maybe just a gratitude for the fact that you get to be a part of all this. Now from here, think about some aspect of your life. Maybe it's, a house that you have. Maybe it's the food that you have in your refrigerator. Maybe it's the vehicle that you drive. Maybe it's your dog. Whatever it is, picture it in your mind. Picture it in your mind and offer gratitude for that. So you can just do things like I'm thankful for this. I appreciate that. I'm so glad this is a part of my life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, that's an easy one to do. You can just repeat the word thank you over and over and over again. Now, lastly, just offer gratitude for the practice itself. I I was in a bad way before I started to realize what I could and couldn't control. And when I realized that I could control to an extent how I paid attention, it just changed everything. It made life much less daunting. So I'm very grateful for the practice. I'm very grateful for the practice of mindfulness, for great teachers. I've had some incredible teachers. And so now the last part is, imagine people that aren't aware of any of this stuff. The people that are kind of stuck in their minds and stuck in stuff that is hard and difficult and hard to understand or hard to figure out or confusing or just whatever. Just imagine people that are confused and lost and offer a sense of, you know, I understand what you feel like. I understand what you're going through. I hope you find some peace. I hope you find, a sense of insight or comfort in your life. I know what it's like to be confused. I know what it's like to be in a dark place. But I also know what it's like to, find a sense of hope and excitement, a spark, a new exciting thing, a new relationship, a new goal, new inspiration. And so for anyone that's out there that's suffering, I hope you find that inspiration. I hope you find that path forward like I found with mindfulness. And I hope you find something that empowers you and helps you feel the best version of yourself more often than not. Now be intentional about how you finish. So take 2 rounds of breath. The second exhale ends the practice. And we'll come back on to say our goodbyes. Well, another great week. Another great week of getting on the cushion, getting the training in. Again, thank you so much to the people who've been participating with me at 06. That's awesome. Not too many people are up this early. That's cool. For everyone who watched this later on in the day, I hope it kind of nice down green ramp just slides you into your day. And again, if you have any questions or comments or thoughts or observations, please let me know. Yeah. So have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll be back at it on Monday. Um, I'm gonna be guiding practice all week next week. Now we're on next week's the 20th week, so there's only 20, 21, 22, 23. There's 4 weeks left. So there's 1 month left. So kind of we'll finish up around Christmas, I guess. But after I finish this art of peace, this year's art of peace practice, I'm gonna take a week off. So that will happen probably around Christmas sometime. But other than that, we're good to go. All right, Armor Down. Such a pleasure.